Hi, this is Hunter with Technically Speaking at Source Allies, and today we're going to talk about infrastructure as code. So, to start off, what is infrastructure as code? Also known as IAC, it is the practice of managing and provisioning infrastructure using code rather than manual processes and settings. And why would you want to use this? What are some of the benefits? To start off, efficiency. It helps automate repetitive tasks which reduces manual errors, saves you time, consistency. It helps ensure consistent and repeatable infrastructure deployments. Collaboration, it encourages collaboration between development and operations teams. And then lastly, version control, it enables versioning and tracking changes over time. So a lot of great benefits. You can already see kind of the power of infrastructure as code, but I think you really start to see how helpful it is with applications at scale. Once you start to manage multiple services in multiple environments, uh, this complexity, any manual changes, really time consuming, really easy to make an error in the console. And that's kind of where code comes in and really helps things. So to kind of go through this, I'm going to talk about three of the major IAC tools: AWS CloudFormation, the AWS Cloud Development Kit, and Terraform. And so to illustrate this, I have some examples of a basic Lambda setup with IAC. Not a whole lot to it, not going to go line by line, explain the code. Just want to show some syntax differences between each tool. Um, so we can start off with CloudFormation. CloudFormation, as you can see here, just that basic Lambda setup I was talking about. We have the function and then the Lambda execution role as well necessary to deploy this. Um, so AWS CloudFormation is AWS's native IAC service. CloudFormation uses templates and stacks written in JSON or YAML to manage infrastructure. Some pros with this tool: easy integration with other AWS services since it is a native AWS tool. It comes with an out-of-the-box deployment platform, the CloudFormation console, which is nice to see events run, services get deployed. And since it is the foundation of IAC on AWS, CloudFormation has tons of documentation, tons of examples. So whenever you're deploying resources, you always have those to look at, which is really helpful. And one tip with this is to use the serverless application model, the SAM CLI, to deploy templates. Even if you're not doing anything serverless, this can be really helpful for developer experience. It allows you to see CloudFormation events right in your terminal, see things get deployed, rollbacks, anything that fails, possibly. Some cons with CloudFormation, though: it can have a learning curve for beginners. The templates can be something it takes a little bit to get used to. And then also, if you have some complex resource configurations, it can be hard to set those up using JSON or YAML. Not the most flexible languages there, but you can get the job done with those. And that takes us into our next tool, which is the AWS Cloud Development Kit. So quickly go through the code here. Similar thing, just setting up a Lambda function and that execution role as well. And the main difference here that you can see is the use of TypeScript. So that is kind of the big thing with the CDK. You use IAC with high-level programming languages, so Python, TypeScript, Java, etc. And that really solves the issue of complex resource configurations that are difficult in CloudFormation. It's also easier to understand than templates and stacks with CloudFormation a lot of the time if you're a developer with coding experience, since you've used these languages for a while now. And then the last pro to the CDK is the abstraction for complex infrastructure patterns. They use constructs that you can just import and kind of abstract away some of the patterns that CloudFormation you have to explicitly use. There are some cons with the CDK though. If you are not a developer or you aren't familiar with a programming language, that is another hurdle to tackle when trying to deploy code with IAC. That's another thing to learn if you aren't familiar with it. And then also with continuous updates and changes to CDK packages, it could require some frequent updates to code as well. So that may be something to consider as well. And then our last tool is Terraform, the one tool here that is not AWS native. But yeah, still gets the job done. As you can see, it's another Lambda function, kind of all of the things that go into that, and then that execution role as well. Yep, a little more verbose than the other two, but yeah. So Terraform, it is an open source IAC tool by HashiCorp. It's similar to CloudFormation in that it kind of uses the goal state of your infrastructure file and it constructs a plan of API calls directly to your infrastructure to get to that state. Pros with Terraform, multi-cloud support. So you can use this for AWS, Azure, Google Cloud, any other cloud providers out there, which is nice. Learn one thing, use it across other providers. It comes with the declarative language HCL for defining infrastructure. And a lot of people think that it's more readable than CloudFormation, so kind of lessens that learning curve a little bit. And it is open source, so there's a large and active open source community as well for documentation, resources, and all of those things. Some cons with Terraform, though, can be a learning curve for HCL since it is syntax most people don't use regularly, and then just Terraform concepts in general, kind of similar to CloudFormation. You have to get used to how resources are structured and deployed in Terraform. And so since Terraform can be used across providers, you might need some external plugins for certain integrations, either with AWS, Azure, kind of depending on what cloud provider you are working with. And unlike CloudFormation and CDK, it does not support automatic rollback if anything fails during deployment, which is always a good idea to have in production. Yeah, so those are the three main tools there. So now whether you want to choose one of those tools or one of the many other IAC tools out there, some considerations when thinking about it are team expertise and familiarity with the tool. If you're not a developer, you don't have experience with high-level programming languages, CDK is probably not the best way to go since it is going to be learning a whole new language on top of learning how to use IAC in general. Project requirements and complexity, it is usually a good idea to just start out with CloudFormation. It's the least complex. Just put everything in a template, a couple services, which is really good for like a small application side project. No complexity, straightforward. You can see everything in the CloudFormation console. And then the last consideration is integration with other tools and services. If you're going to be orchestrating infrastructure outside of AWS, Terraform is probably going to be the most useful there since CDK and CloudFormation are more geared towards AWS native services. But yeah, there are plenty of other tools out there. So whether you're looking at one of these considerations or anything else you're considering when looking at IAC, there's plenty of tools out there that can suit your needs. No matter what you choose, there are some best practices that span across tools. So touching on a couple of those here. First, version control, using a version control system like Git, for example, to manage your IAC code. Documentation, making sure you have some clear and comprehensive documentation for your infrastructure code. Testing, having test strategies for infrastructure, making sure you catch errors early before they actually hit deployment. And then lastly, security, making sure you're following security best practices and auditing your IAC code for vulnerabilities. And that is all I wanted to touch on today. So I hope this has been a nice, helpful overview of infrastructure as code, the importance of IAC, some tools available for it, and then the best practices that go along with those tools. This has been Hunter with Technically Speaking at Source Allies. If you have a topic you want to see covered, comment it down below. Check out sourceallies.com to learn more about us. Thanks for watching, and we'll see you next time.